Welcome. This video is a follow-up to my dragon guide about how early game dragons can lose you games. The point of this video is to see just how much of an impact do dragon buffs have during the laning phase compared to regular items. In other words, this video will give you a better idea of how much stronger do you get from dragons early in the game and helps you decide if the effort it takes is worth it. Let's start with the Hextech buff, which is 7.5 attack speed and 7.5 ability haste increase. By far, the best two champions with this buff are Yone and Yasuo. Here is a short test with Yasuo, comparing his total damage output between having no items or buffs and the Hextech buff. I also included a third test featuring a long dagger for comparison. They are all level 4, the exact same runes, and I do my best to use my Q ability and auto attacks efficiently. Now, at the end of 20 seconds of non-stop damage output, we see a staggering increase of 183 damage compared to no items or buffs, which is 6.4% increase in damage output. And let's not forget the long dagger, which is doing 78 damage less than the Hextech buff. Overall, the Hextech Drake does wonders for Yasuo's total damage output if he is constantly landing autos and Qs. Now let's take a look at an average champion who still benefits from the Hextech buff in my opinion, someone like Ezreal. The results were not what I expected. The Hextech buff does indeed give a damage bump over having no items or buffs, dealing 163 more damage or 7.3. The long dagger, however, is more than keeping up with the dragon buff, being slightly higher with 182 damage or an 8% increase. Now, time for the Infernal Dragon, which gives a 5% damage bump. Typically, this buff will be best on damage stackers like Veigar or Jhin. Here we have Jhin going through 2 rotations of auto attacks, all versions having a Noon Quiver. I'm not using any abilities to make it easier to assess purely the auto attack damage. The dummy in this test has 40 armor and 1500 HP to simulate a champion. Here are the numbers of the total damage output. Because of the way that Jhin's passive works, it seems that he gets way more damage at level 6 with one longsword than an Infernal Dragon, almost by twice the amount. This has made me think that Jhin isn't the best to test the Infernal Dragon with because of how much AD his passive grants him with items, but I thought it was interesting enough to leave in. By doing the math, we know that a longsword will always be better than Infernal Dragon unless you have more than 200 AD, or 400 AP when comparing to an Amplifying Tome if you're playing an AP champion. Moving on to the Mountain Dragon, which gives an 8% defense increase, we're testing it with Shyvana, whose passive grants her 5 defense whenever she takes a dragon. At level 6, Shyvana's base armor is at 40% effectiveness. Adding a cloth armor increases it by 5%, bringing it to 45%, and a second cloth armor increases it by another 4%, making it a total of 49% damage reduction effectiveness. The reason, by the way, that it actually gets lower is because the more armor you have, the less each point of armor will increase your damage reduction. But how does it compare to having 1 or 2 mountain dragons early in the game? One mountain dragon combined with her passive armor bonus comes just under the value of a cloth armor, bringing her effective damage reduction to 44%. A second mountain dragon isn't enough to beat the double cloth armor either, bringing the total effective damage reduction to 47%. Cloth armor is just straight up better earlier in the game. Time for arguably the best dragon in the game, the Ocean Dragon. The buff heals you 2.5% of your missing HP every 5 seconds, so it works really well against poke champions. It also works best with champions who are often fighting at low HP, like Warwick or Tryndamere. Let's skip straight to the end, because this test truly shows just how awesome the Ocean Dragon really is. On all different HP values, the Vanilla test and Relic Shield are lagging severely behind compared to the quick healing of the Ocean Dragon buff. A good way to summarize these results is that the Ocean Dragon gives you a real chance at staying at lane after a bad trade, as you will heal quite a bit by the time the next wave arrives. Even if you take an even trade, you're going to be better off in just a few seconds. Do keep in mind though that the higher HP you are, the less overall healing you will get, but this is still far better than having no Ocean Drake buff healing you at all. So, does this mean that the Ocean Dragons should always be taken? No, not always. Because sometimes you just can't take dragons without losing a lot. You should allow the Ocean Dragon to be the bonus you get for good gameplay, not the win condition. Because only then will you be able to take Ocean Dragons without putting yourself at great risk of falling behind. In fact, you should apply this rule to all dragons. Thanks for watching.